Cathie Wood believes that what we saw in the aftermath of COVID will be repeated, not just for a 1-year period, but for the next 5 to 10 years as well. Cathie Wood said that truth wins out when interest rates come down and inflate following inflation. And she said that the truth will win out when interest rates come down and inflate following inflation. Therefore, in order to set the stage for this, let's quickly go through the timeline for innovation. This is the history of invention, and we are currently living during a historical period that is unlike any other in all of history. A graph that was created by our chief futurist, Brett Winton, based on his consultations with academics and studies conducted by academics. These innovations have been the most really game-changing ones throughout the course of history. You will also observe that prior to the present day, there has only been one other instance in which we've witnessed the development of 3 large and multiple innovation platforms at the same time. It was near the beginning of the 1900s. It was the automobile, electricity, and the telephone that changed everything. The transformation changed the world. And believe it or not, we are going through a period that is quite like what we were going through back then. There was a pandemic at the time, and it was referred to as the Spanish flu. During that period, there was a war. It was during the First World War. Those difficulties were a lot more severe than the issues we face right now. Inflation reached its highest point of 24% in June of 1920 and then dropped within 1 year to minus 15% in June of 21. However, what actually occurred was that innovation took off, and as a result, inflation. And after making it through that very difficult time, we found ourselves in what was known as the Roaring '20s back in those days. Because inflation and interest rates were beginning to decline, this was an excellent time to make any form of investment, including those in the stock market. At the moment, 5 of our innovation platforms are undergoing development all at once. Again, never happened in history. And the seeds for all of them were sowed during the 20 years that ended in the tech and telecom bubble. Now, the tech and telecom bubble is the first time that a lot of investors heard this concept of exponential growth and they bought into the dream. However, the problem was that back then, the technologies weren't ready. And even if they were even close to being ready, the expenses were prohibitively expensive. It wasn't until 2006 that AWS gave us access to the cloud. Deep learning did not bring forth the significant advances in artificial intelligence that were anticipated until 2012. In the case of DNA sequencing, back in 2003, when the first entire human genome was sequenced, it took $2.7 billion and 13 years of processing power to sequence just one genome. This was the first time that the entire human genome had been sequenced. It would have been unfeasible to afford even if prices had already dropped by 75% the following day or the following year. The cost was just too high. When they first started, it cost $2.7 billion to sequence the genome of a single individual. Today, that same sequence costs only $500, and a few hours of computer power, which according to 2 different businesses, Illumina and Ultima, will be either $100 or $200 the following year, will cost you either of those amounts. Now that technologies are mature enough and the prices are competitive enough, we believe that we are prepared to face the public. That is very important. The question now is, what exactly are these 5 platforms? DNA sequencing is now more accurately referred to as multi-mix sequencing due to the fact that it involves more than simply DNA. RNA and proteins are both involved. It is a process called methylation, and it's a pretty advanced one. However, the prospect is really enticing. As a result of these advancements, we will eventually be able to cure diseases. And in point of fact, we've already got one, and she's going to get a really significant breakthrough in the very last week. The price of robotics industrial robots is falling by a significant margin. We are experiencing a lack of workers, and innovation is the key to finding solutions. Right now, there is an exponential rise in the demand for robots. She discussed the situation in Ukraine, which is currently in a state of crisis. Energy storage as a result of the tragedy, as well as the rise in the price of oil. Consumers' preferences are shifting away from tradition and toward innovation. But also because these are superior automobiles in general, they have a lower impact on the surrounding ecosystem. The recent developments in artificial intelligence continue to surprise researchers even at this late stage. They are attempting to see as far into the future as we can, and as a result, we are witnessing breakthroughs that we anticipated would occur in 5 or 10 years, occurring in as little as 6 months or 1 year today. She is unsure whether any of you have been informed about ChatGPT or not. This GPT-3 variant was just made available, and it was just released. You can basically talk to it, prompt it, and say things like, "Write me an essay on disruptive innovation," as Cathie Wood would characterize it. It will comply with your requests. During a brainstorming session, they performed an exercise, and in fewer than 3 seconds, we were able to determine that it was quite good because it scraped the internet and they have a lot of it. They are completely open about all of their findings. Therefore, the conversation for GP3 had a lot going on in it. Therefore, they believe that AI will bring about a revolution that is going to be significantly more extensive than what they imagined even 1 year ago when they were solely focused on innovative disruption. And lastly, there is the technology of blockchain. In the year of 2020, research was conducted to determine the level of productivity that may be expected from each of these 5 innovation platforms. You may also view the growth rates that they calculated for the business. A truly transformative breakthrough in the public equities markets was valued at approximately $14 trillion at the time, which was significantly less than 10% of the overall global public equity market. Over the course of the past year, that number has increased to $7 trillion. What, if anything, has changed about the lower end of 2030? Nothing. In point of fact, those circles are much larger now than we had previously assumed, and one of the primary reasons for this is the rise of artificial intelligence, in order for you to get an idea of the growth rates that we anticipate. These are compound annual growth rates that are somewhere in the middle, and they have been increasing. The very first one has nothing to do with anything other than innovation. We believe that the rate of growth will be quite sluggish, and we also believe that there will be a lot of disruption and disintermediation in the conventional order of the world. So we believe that 3% may be too optimistic. However, our trust in those other growth rates has improved as a result of the fact that the top circles have decreased as a result of the decline in the markets, while the bottom circles have actually expanded. Therefore, there are more opportunities and the potential for bigger growth rates. We believe that the convergence between and across technologies is one of the primary contributors to those growth rates having a bigger potential for expansion. They have these S-curves feeding S-curves feeding S-curves, just to give you a couple of instances of how this works. Therefore, exponential growth compounds over time. Taxi platforms that operate autonomously, they were observing evidence that supported the premise. She recently went for a ride in one of Cruise Automation's cars in San Francisco, and she thought it was incredible. Cruise Automation is GM's offering of driverless vehicles in that city. Platforms for driverless taxis represent the coming together of 3 of our most important platforms. Robots, including autonomous cars, are examples of this category. Because of their need for energy storage, these cars will be electric. Gas-powered automobiles and artificial intelligence both have a higher total cost of ownership than what is now available. They will be driven by artificial intelligence, therefore once more, and at the S-curves that are feeding one another. One S-curve is feeding another S-curve. We believe that this will lead to enormous opportunities. One further illustration can be found in the field of healthcare. One of the technologies that they have is called multi-omic sequencing, and another is artificial intelligence. These two things came together alongside a technique that was made attainable as a result of DNA sequencing, CRISPR-Cas9, or gene editing in general. These 3 pillars are going to not only usher in a period of unprecedented opportunity for expansion, but they are also going to put an end to illness. Are you finding that the pieces of information presented here are assisting you in determining how you should handle your finances and how things that are happening in our economy are creating change in your mindset? If that's the case, we'd love to hear your comments on how you saw and what you saw in this video. Write down your thoughts and provide feedback on what our presenter, Ms. Cathie Wood, is sharing with us in the comment section box down below. It brings a smile to our faces to learn that this is of assistance to you.